Chapter 1. Qian Jin, forward. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Yudong Editor. Ice-T, Qian Jin also means, forward, in Chinese. After coming back from Sunset Mountains, Qian Jin locked himself in his room. No matter how his roommate tried to persuade him, he didn't want to come out. So embarrassing. This is too embarrassing. 3 days ago, Oakland Academy set up a test for the junior students, and the location of the test was at Sunset Mountains. Qian Jin could be considered one of the top candidates among all the junior students. He came to the academy less than a year ago and was already a level 3 warrior. Even the instructor of the warrior branch of the academy, level 5 warrior Rodriguez, said, among all the students in the second grade, Qian Jin will have the best future. He's talented and has a great work ethic. He might even surpass me in a few years. Who would have imagined that right after the instructor made that comment, Qian Jin ran into a situation at Sunset Mountains. The best student in the second grade of the warrior branch was knocked unconscious by something inexplicable. The thing that knocked him out was a hat that fell from the sky. This was now a big joke that had been passed around in Oakland Academy. Everyone knew about it. Everyone in Oakland Academy knew that there was an extremely ugly-looking junior student. This student was so ugly that even the gods were disgusted with him. The gods punished him by knocking him out with a hat. After finding out that he would be referred to as the extremely ugly-looking guy in the next few years, Qian Jin wanted to drop out of the academy. How am I going to live my normal life? What was currently in Qian Jin's hand was the culprit that knocked him out. It was a sky-blue hat. The hat was wide and pointed on the top like a typical mage's hat. At Oakland Academy, every student in the mage branch had a hat like this. This was the exact reason why Qian Jin couldn't figure out how this common mage hat managed to knock him out. While he was deep in thought, the door opened. The one who came in was Roland, Qian Jin's best friend in Oakland Academy. Ha ha ha. I heard that there's an extremely ugly-looking guy in our academy. Ha. Qian Jin, why does your face look weird? **T. Qian Jin, you don't look too well, are you ill? Do you want me to get you some medicine from Instructor Rodriguez? I also heard that Instructor Rodriguez was the one who led the test that day. I'm not sure if he knows that guy. You know that guy, Eddie E.T. really? I'm that damned extremely ugly-looking guy. After getting rid of Roland, Qian Jin became angrier as he thought more about what had happened. In the end, he decided to go to sleep and cover his face with the hat. Qian Jin had been standing outside of the blacksmith shop for a while now. What is this place? Qian Jin had asked this question more than 30 times the last 2 hours. The voice of the so-called system wizard had patiently explained the situation to him more than 30 times already. This is the Endless World, a virtual gaming space constructed using third-generation virtual reality technology. However, Qian Jin still didn't understand. What is this third-generation virtual reality technology? And what is a virtual gaming space? He knew what the word virtual meant. It was a word commonly associated with illusion magic. He knew the word game as well, like the soccer game. The annual Oakland Cup. But once the two words were combined together, Qian Jin wasn't really sure what it meant anymore. A soccer game that uses illusion magic. Damn, what is all this? System Wizard had to continue explaining. The so-called virtual gaming space is a world made of codes and numbers. The world might look realistic, but one shouldn't be fooled by it. To explain it further, the System Wizard even showed Qian Jin a series of codes and numbers. Player. Qian Jin Profession. Warrior Level. 1 Strength. 18 Agility. 15 Endurance. 18 Intelligence. 15 Spiritual Power. 1 Health. 180/180 Mana. 110 out of 110 Stamina. 180 out of 180. Qian Jin knew that these numbers were all real. Only his closest family knew that he was born with a deformed and incomplete spiritual power. Otherwise, why would he run away from his family, a family where all the fighters are both warriors and mages, to this remote academy and choose to just be a warrior? Qian Jin felt like he was having a headache. After the test on Sunset Mountains, strange things had constantly been happening to him. First was the incident where he was knocked out by a hat. On top of failing the test, he got the reputation of being extremely ugly looking. Then, he tried to take a nap in his room, and that brought him into another world. A virtual world made up of some kind of numbers. This was all crazy to him. If the system wizard didn't tell him that he would be sent back to the real world after 8 hours, Qian Jin might have literally killed himself. Among all of the things the system wizard said, this was the only fact that calmed Qian Jin down a little. Only 8 hours, I will just treat it as a dream then, he thought. As he was planning out how to spend the time, he looked at the blacksmith shop and asked, "Why are we here?" "Before you start the game, you have to choose a life skill." The system wizard had a beautiful voice, but Qian Jin wasn't in the mood to enjoy it. Life skill. That's right. Before Qian Jin could react, the system wizard sent him information about the life skills. From smelting to forging and identifying herbs to pharmaceutics, there were countless life skills. All the skills stood alone, but they could be affected by others. From the instructions given by the system wizard, Qian Jin could easily combine these skills and create many life professions. After learning smelting and forging, one could become a blacksmith. After gaining knowledge on magic arrays, a common blacksmith could advance to become a magic forging master who could produce magic armor and weapons. However, life skills couldn't be combined together randomly. First of all, the skills must complement each other. On top of that, there was a strict condition. One must be a master in the life skills that he or she wished to combine. Qian Jin wasn't surprised of this limitation. It was no different than the real world. Only after one had reached the peak in an area would they be qualified to tap into other areas and take a path that no one else has ever walked on. Qian Jin was intrigued by the limitless opportunities. Chapter 2. Learning the art. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Yudong Editor. Ice-T. Qian Jin started to feel that this weird virtual gaming world wasn't useless. Every one of the hundreds of life skills had their own features. Qian Jin was dizzy after just looking through them. He couldn't make up his mind. At this time, the system wizard's voice sounded again. My recommendation is to learn smelting and forging first. Why? From the system scan, you have great potential for both strength and endurance. Both smelting and forging are the best ways to improve these two attributes early on. You could increase both attributes to 40 in a short time, and once that happens, you would probably be able to start the actual game. Wait. Do you mean that I can't start the game right now? Qian Jin felt something was wrong as he listened. Yes, the data from the scan indicates that the toughness of your body is far lower than normal. You must go through exercises before you can proceed with the actual game. The toughness of my body is far lower than normal. This sentence sounded awkward. Qian Jin repeated the sentence to himself several times and suddenly realized, doesn't it just mean that I'm deformed? Qian Jin was mad, but he also found that funny. Although he was born with deformed spiritual power and couldn't become a mage, he had good talent as a warrior. He had successfully passed the entrance exam for the warrior branch and got accepted into Oakland Academy. Moreover, just after a month of training, Instructor Rodriguez had complimented him numerous times and said he would have a bright future as a warrior. He wasn't sure why he would be considered abnormally weak in this virtual world. I'm not sure if Instructor Rodriguez would receive the same comment here. Qian Jin thought as he pushed open the blacksmith shop's door. The blacksmith shop was quite deserted. It wasn't anything close to what Qian Jin had imagined. There was neither a raging fire nor any scattering sparks. An elder blacksmith was lying against an anvil and smoking a pipe. He coughed irregularly, it sounded like someone was working a broken bellows. Qian Jin felt bad for him just listening to the sound. As Qian Jin fully opened the door, the old man slowly opened his cloudy eyes and said, "I'm not starting up my forge today. If you want anything made, come back tomorrow." He bumped into a wall, the old Qian Jin would immediately turn around and never come back. Thanks to the extremely ugly-looking student incident, Qian Jin's strength didn't improve. However, he became more shameless and stopped caring about what other people said. The old blacksmith didn't give him too much respect, but Qian Jin still had a smile on his face as he replied, "I didn't come here to buy an item. I'm here to learn blacksmithing." Oh. Qian Jin thought he would get rejected right away, however, after the old blacksmith heard this, his cloudy eyes suddenly turned clear. He stopped smoking and stared at Qian Jin intensely for a long time. Then, he shook his head and said in pity, "I would have never thought that someone from the young generation would still be willing to learn the art of blacksmithing. Unfortunately, son, you are too weak. You are not a good fit for this job. I have been a blacksmith for my entire life, and I know how hard and tough being a blacksmith is. With your current condition, you wouldn't even last a day. It would be better if you go and learn some other skills." Too weak. When the system wizard told Qian Jin that his body was weaker than normal, he didn't really believe it. Now, after the old blacksmith had said the same thing, he felt that there might be some truth to the wizard's words. However, he didn't react negatively. He quickly responded, "If you are willing to teach me, I am able to endure through anything." "Oh really? If you can endure through anything?" The old blacksmith closed his cloudy eyes, leaned against the anvil listlessly, and started to smoke out of his pipe again. Smoke soon filled the room, and light, rustling sounds came from the pipe as the tobacco burned. After God knows how long, the old blacksmith opened his eyes again and pointed at a corner with his pipe. "Pick up that hammer on the corner and bring it to me." "Okay." Qian Jin walked to the corner and was about to pick up the iron hammer that was about half the height of a man. Unfortunately, the weight of the hammer was far beyond Qian Jin's expectation. He was a level 3 warrior, so it would be easy for him to pick up items that were 200 to 300 pounds. But currently, despite exerting all his effort, he could barely lift the handle of the hammer. It would be an impossible task to actually pick up the hammer. The hammer had to be at least 1,000 pounds in Qian Jin's estimation. A blacksmith working with 1,000-pound hammer. It was unheard of. However, Qian Jin was very stubborn. He knew that he was born with a deformed and incomplete spiritual power, but he never stopped meditating. He believed that one day, he would feel the existence of the magic elements and become a mage. He couldn't pick up the 1,000-pound hammer, but that didn't mean that he would give up. He clenched his teeth, and the veins on his head bulged. He shouted as he grabbed the handle of the hammer and pulled upwards fiercely. An ear-piercing noise echoed out. Qian Jin had actually managed to drag the 1,000-pound hammer a few inches. He couldn't pick it up, but why couldn't he drag it? Although a few inches wasn't significant, it was enough for Qian Jin. The old blacksmith was still sucking on his pipe, but an unnoticeable expression of approval flashed across his face. It only took Qian Jin a few steps to get to the corner, but it took him at least 2 hours to drag the 1,000-pound hammer back. He had fully experienced the difference between a 1,000-pound hammer and a 200 to 300-pound hammer. Qian Jin collapsed onto the floor after he dragged the hammer to the old blacksmith. He felt the same as when he just arrived at Oakland Academy and Instructor Rodriguez ordered him to run around the academy 50 laps. The last bit of strength in his body had been sucked away, he could only see colorful lights flashing in his eyes. He only heard buzzing noises and nothing else. Qian Jin sat up on the floor and slowly straightened his legs. He took deep breaths as if he was about to die. There wasn't a single blacksmith in Oakland City that used a hammer like this to forge. He wasn't sure if it was because the city was too small and remote that there weren't any talented blacksmiths, or if blacksmiths who used such hammers even existed in real life. After a while, the old blacksmith slowly moved the pipe away from his mouth. "From today on, you are my, old Blake's, apprentice." After he said that, he bent his back and picked up the 1,000-pound hammer. The hammer that took Qian Jin 2 hours to move became a handy tool in the old blacksmith's hand. It moved easily in old Blake's hand as if it wasn't a 1,000-pound hammer that could smash people into a paste, but rather a feather duster. He randomly grabbed a piece of pig iron beside the anvil and threw it into the forge and said, "Light it up." Chapter 3. Working with Metals. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator. Yudong Editor. Ice-T. OK. As Qian Jin was working the bellows and pumping air into the forge, old Blake picked up a pair of tongs beside his feet and used it to grab the red-hot pig iron from the forge. Whoosh! The 1,000-pound hammer broke through the air and smashed onto the burning red pig iron as if it was a meteor that smashed into the earth. When the hammer met the pig iron and the anvil, it created a series of sparks and deafening noises. The hot sparks were like brilliant fire magic. The sparks endlessly flew out, and the noises of colliding metals overlapped and sounded very similar to thunder. Qian Jin was at the side observing. He had never focused on anything in his life as much as he was right now. He could have never thought that there was such a way to work with metals. The old blacksmith's performance couldn't be considered working with metals anymore. Rather, it should be considered an art. His skills were on another level. The 1,000-pound hammer was swung with ease and control on top of the small anvil. The old blacksmith gave Qian Jin an impression similar to a calligraphy artist splashing his ink and creating a masterpiece. The old blacksmith didn't move very quickly, but his consistency was out of this world. The hammer landed on the pig iron that laid on top of the anvil more than 100 times, and the old blacksmith would raise the hammer to the exact same height every time before pulling it down, as if he went through the most precise measurements. The hammer was raised high up and was then smashed onto the anvil. There wasn't even a single error in the hundreds of swings. If the hammer was swapped with a double-handed sword, Qian Jin would be able to keep this level of consistency for 10 strikes, but he knew how heavy this hammer was. He had a hard time just dragging it across the room. He was far from the level that the old blacksmith was at. Qian Jin stared at the splashing spark and was completely stunned. Player Qian Jin learned elementary smelting. Player Qian Jin learned elementary forging. The old blacksmith landed the final powerful swing as the system wizard notified Qian Jin. A blade rested quietly on top of the anvil. It was still red hot. Old Blake picked up the tongs, grabbed the blade from the anvil and threw it into a barrel of water. Sizzle. Steam instantly rose from the barrel. After all of that was done, the old blacksmith slowly put the hammer down and lit up his pipe again. As my apprentice, the first thing that you have to learn is how to use a hammer. The old blacksmith bent his back and found another hammer beside the anvil. He then threw it to Qian Jin and said, "Starting from today, you have to swing this hammer 1,000 times a day. You can leave after you are done. I will only teach you new skills after I feel like you learned how to use a hammer properly." The hammer that the old blacksmith threw to Qian Jin was still heavy, but it was nothing compared to the previous one. This hammer was way smaller than that 1,000-pound hammer. When Qian Jin tried to lift it, he felt like the hammer was about 200 or 300 pounds. Although he was having some trouble swinging it, the task was manageable, unlike the other hammer. He held the hammer and didn't try to swing the hammer right away. He closed his eyes and tried to think back to when the old blacksmith was forging and how he moved. Qian Jin was picturing and simulating what he would do in his mind and compared it with the old blacksmith's. He corrected himself many times in his mind. Old Blake stared at Qian Jin curiously with his cloudy eyes. He was wondering what Qian Jin was doing, and why he hadn't already started forging. After close to 100 simulations in his mind, Qian Jin suddenly opened his eyes. He raised the hammer above his head and confidently smashed it down onto a piece of pig iron. Tink! The sound of the hammer hitting the pig iron on the anvil echoed in this small shop, and the burning sparks splashed in all directions like a midnight firework. An unprecedented sharp look appeared on old Blake's face. His right hand that didn't even shake when holding the 1,000-pound hammer shook violently as if he couldn't even hold up his light pipe. Amazing! Old Blake was surprised by Qian Jin, who was about to land the second swing. Qian Jin's arm position and the speed of his first swing were identical to him. However, that wasn't the reason why old Blake was surprised. When he was demonstrating the technique to Qian Jin, the hidden key aspect to his method of blacksmithing was not the arm position nor the striking speed, instead, it was the loud sound from the metals colliding. The sound that Qian Jin made from his first strike was 30% similar to the sound that old Blake made. This wasn't a coincidence. Qian Jin had actually paid close attention and observed carefully. 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes. Qian Jin swung the hammer non-stop and struck on the anvil repeatedly. He was so into the process that he even forgot to keep track of time and ignored the tiredness that his body felt. He suddenly realized that blacksmithing was very interesting. The old blacksmith seemed to ignore his new apprentice. He laid on a bench, closed his eyes and rested. The smoke pipe in old Blake's mouth told Qian Jin that he wasn't sleeping, as the tobacco in the pipe was still burning. Your forging proficiency improved, your strength increased by 1 point. Your forging proficiency improved, your strength increased by 1 point. Your forging proficiency improved, your strength increased by 1 point. This boring system notification was the only thing that kept Qian Jin company. 500 times. Qian Jin's arm was very tired and sore, so he utilized his level 3 warrior energy to replenish his muscles and physical strength to keep going. Qian Jin finally completed the 1,000 strike close to evening. When he stopped, he felt that not only his right arms, but all the muscles on the right half of his body were sore and in pain. It was impossible for him to raise his right arm again for the rest of the day. As Qian Jin was leaving the blacksmith shop, the old blacksmith opened his eyes, nodded at Qian Jin and went back to resting. So I've completed today's task. Qian Jin dragged his tired body out of the shop. He thought of one question as he looked up at the dark sky. Damn! System wizard, come out here. What's your question? Qian Jin pointed at the sky and asked, didn't you say that I would automatically return to my world after 8 hours? Look at the time. 8 hours. I think it's about 16 hours already. Oh, I forgot to tell you one thing. Time flows differently in the game compared to your world. The ratio is 1 to 2. Meaning, 8 hours in your world is equivalent to 16 hours in the game. But you are right, you are close to the 16 hours requirement. Relax, you will soon return back to your world. Chapter 4. My strength increased. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Yudong Editor. Ice-T. I. As Qian Jin was about to lose his temper, a system notification sounded. Player Qian Jin, please pay attention. Your gaming time for today is almost used up. Be prepared to go offline. The gaming world started to twist and turn in Qian Jin's eyes, and the voice sounded less and less real. Qian Jin felt like he had a very weird dream. He dreamt about going to a place called the Endless World, which was a virtual gaming space. Blacksmithing was also a part of his dream. Usually, people would only be able to vaguely remember a dream or only remember a small part of the dream. People were rarely able to remember every single detail that occurred in a dream. However, Qian Jin found that he had almost memorized his whole dream. He was able to recall the small details in the dream as if these incidents actually occurred. He held on to an edge of the bed and tried to sit up. Suddenly, He felt a tremendous amount of soreness in both of his arms, and every single muscle in his body was extremely tired. This situation had happened once before. He felt a similar level of soreness when he woke up after Instructor Rodriguez ordered him to sprint as fast as he could around the academy 50 times at the beginning of his stay on campus. Compared to last time, the soreness and pain he was experiencing at the moment surpassed it by a whole level. He couldn't find a single muscle that wasn't hurting. His hand hurt the most, as if he battled against the instructors in the academy, and the shock from the collision of the weapons injured his hand. When Qian Jin raised up his arms, he realized that his arms were wet. He didn't know when this happened. The sweat covered his skin as if he applied oil on it. It wasn't only his arms, he also quickly found out that his chest, back, and every part of his body had a ton of sweat on it. He jumped off of the bed and took off his blanket. His sheets and blanket were soaked with sweat. If someone entered the room right now, they might mistake the situation as if Qian Jin had peed in bed. Qian Jin, as I was saying. Roland pushed open the door again, and his eyes quickly landed on the wet blanket and sheets. His mouth opened wide and turned into an O shape. **T. Qian Jin immediately knew what his friend was thinking from just looking at Roland's expression. It was what Qian Jin was most afraid of. "Roland, this isn't what it looks like." I know, Roland said in an understanding tone as he nodded repeatedly. However, the smile on his face told Qian Jin that he would never believe what Qian Jin's explanation was. "I had a dream, and I sweat a lot from it." Qian Jin pointed at his bed and explained anxiously. He had just become the extremely ugly guy that everyone at the academy heard about. He wouldn't be that unfortunate and be known as the guy who peed in his bed, right? I know. Roland slowly stepped back and said, "Qian Jin, when people get a strong mental blow, things can happen. The act of peeing in bed is forgivable." Before he finished speaking, he rushed out of the room and sprinted away in laughter. Qian Jin wanted to chase after Roland and explain himself a bit more, but after a second thought, why would he do more explaining? He really didn't pee in bed. On top of that, he already had the name of the extremely ugly guy, so why would he worry if he got the name Bedwetting Warrior? Washing my sheets and blanket should be my top priority. Qian Jin quickly took off the sheets on his bed, threw it and the blanket into a wooden tub, and headed toward a river located outside of his residence. How am I going to sleep tonight with everything wet? But then again, why do all my muscles hurt so much? Is it because that I wanted to become strong subconsciously that I trained myself in my sleep? I'm so darn hard working. If the principal of the academy doesn't give me a scholarship, even the great god of war wouldn't let that slide and would punish him for that. Self-motivating, self-ridiculing, staying positive and optimistic when faced with any situation, this was the guideline that Qian Jin followed ever since he left his family. He was never put down by anything except for the extremely ugly guy incident. As Qian Jin was walking through a long corridor, he saw a room in the residence that was filled with dozens of people. They were cheering and yelling loudly as if there was a competition of some sort, and it was getting to the climax. These energetic bastards. It would be great if I tell Instructor Rodriguez to train you guys so hard that you can't even get up. Qian Jin talked to himself as he approached the river. Some students pointed at him and talked behind his back, but he ignored them all. The incident where he got knocked out by a hat wasn't a secret in the academy. None of the students who were with him missed it. Qian Jin's name and history cycled around the academy for days. There weren't any people at the river right now. Qian Jin slowly squatted down. His legs felt powerful, but the soreness convinced him to slow down. After he threw a wooden bucket into the water well, Qian Jin easily swung the roller and pulled up the bucket with water inside it. He lifted the bucket filled with water with his left hand. Qian Jin held the bucket full of water in front of his face. Although it didn't take too much energy to lift this bucket of water before, why did it take him so little effort to do so today? The bucket was full, but why did it feel like the bucket was empty? Did the training in my dream actually work? Qian Jin didn't want to think too much. He poured the water from the bucket to his wooden tub, squatted down again, and started to wash his blanket and sheets. Suddenly, he saw a pair of feet. They belonged to a woman. Qian Jin was sure of his judgment. The pair of white fabric shoes was simple and plain. Qian Jin's eyes traced up the straight legs, and a big black mage robe appeared in front of his eyes. A mage. Oh, wait. Qian Jin quickly adjusted his assessment. This girl was wearing big glasses. Her big pointy mage hat covered more than half of her face, and people couldn't clearly tell what she looked like. She was wearing a mage robe that was a bit larger than her body size, but the grayish-white wand symbol on her chest told people that she was a mage apprentice. This short mage apprentice was also holding a wooden tub in her hands. The tub was smaller than Qian Jin's, and a few clothes were in it. Chapter 5. Gabriella, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Yudong Editor. Ice-T. Qian Jin dragged his wooden tub and moved out of the way. The mage apprentice bowed down 90 degrees to show her thanks and then ran toward the water well. It seemed a bit exaggerated. Qian Jin turned his head and looked at the girl's figure. He was worried that she might trip on something. From the speed she was running at, if she fell, she would fall straight into the water well and be severely injured. The situation that Qian Jin was afraid of didn't occur. The mage apprentice threw the bucket that was tied on a rope into the water well. Bam! The bucket hit the water. Gulp! Then, the sound of the bucket sinking into the water followed. After that, the mage apprentice started trying to pull the bucket up. She didn't seem strong. It was rare for a mage to have a lot of physical strength. The girl tried really hard and was only able to swing the roller on the water well one cycle, that only pulled the bucket above the water surface. Qian Jin couldn't just stand there and watch anymore. As a warrior, he felt anxious for her as she was having a hard time pulling the bucket up. To get rid of his anxiety, he walked to the mage apprentice's side, reached out, and grabbed onto the wooden roller on the water well. The mage apprentice was obviously scared by Qian Jin's actions. She stared at Qian Jin in surprise and timidity. You're a mage, as well as a girl. It would be a lot of trouble for you to do these kinds of physically demanding chores. Qian Jin quickly swung the wooden roller with a single hand, and the rope coiled around the roller. He didn't realize that he was able to work the roller so easily with one hand. He needed to use two hands on the roller before. The mage apprentice was still staring at him behind her big pointy mage hat with her big watery eyes. Here, use it. Qian Jin poured the water into the tub that the mage apprentice put on the ground. He turned around and went back to washing his own stuff and didn't pay attention to how she was looking at him. Qian Jin was fast. It wasn't too complicated to wash the sweaty blanket. After scrubbing and rinsing them once in water, they would be cleaned. Qian Jin got himself one more bucket of water. After seeing the female mage apprentice who was still washing her clothes, he thought about it, filled the bucket up again and placed the bucket beside her. The girl raised her wet hands and wiped some sweat off of her forehead. She looked at this outgoing warrior again in curiosity. It seemed as if her big expressive eyes were showing her thanks. Great. All done. Qian Jin pulled his sheet from the water in the tub and appreciated his own masterpiece. He then folded the wet sheets and twisted it with force. He was trying to squeeze out the water. Rip. Squeak. A clear ripping noise sounded beside the water well, and both people heard it. The girl looked up at Qian Jin, who was standing not too far from her. She was surprised. Although she wasn't a warrior and was only a weak mage apprentice, she knew how tough an item like a sheet was when folded together. It wasn't easy to tear it, let alone ripping it apart by simply twisting it. This Qian Jin looked at the ripped sheet in his hands and was surprised himself. What is this? The sheet ripped after I fully twisted it. How is this possible? When I twisted the sheet before when I washed it, this never happened. Did my strength really increase? Qian Jin quickly shook his head. He had never heard of such a story where a person was able to experience a great increase in strength after one night. Both elders in his family and Instructor Rodriguez had said that everything could only be achieved step by step. Even the great holy city wasn't built in one night. But did my strength really increase that much? Qian Jin looked at the mop-like sheet in his hands. A bitter smile appeared on his face. It wasn't the appropriate time to check if his strength really increased. Buying a new sheet was the top priority. He couldn't sleep without a sheet, since the mattress that the academy provided was very uncomfortable to sleep on. Sheet. Qian Jin rubbed his forehead softly. It looked like he would have to increase his spending again. It was quite unfortunate. After he left his family, he had to come up with the money himself to survive. The allowance from his family wasn't even enough for him to have full meals, let alone buy daily supplies such as clothes. It looks like I have to visit the commercial trading firm and see if I can find a simple job like carrying baggage or something. Qian Jin threw the sheet into his wooden tub. He looked at his cotton blanket listlessly. If he ripped this apart as well, he would be in big trouble. A small hand quietly reached into the wooden tub and grabbed onto the cotton blanket that was still soaked in water. Qian Jin looked up and wanted to see who it was. It was the mage apprentice. She was still timid, but somehow, she found the courage to approach him. She carefully lifted up the blanket and used all her strength to twist it and squeeze out the water. The mage apprentice really gave everything she had. Qian Jin even believed that she used 120% of her effort. Her face was all red, and her body was shaking a little. Qian Jin had to admit that although the mage apprentice was weak, she had enough strength to deal with a cotton blanket. Thanks, Qian Jin said with a big smile on his face as he safeguarded the cotton blanket. If you need to do any physical work, just come and find me. Remember, I'm Qian Jin. I'm in grade 1 in the warrior branch. I'm Gabriella. Ma. Mage branch, grade 2. The mage apprentice lowered her head and looked down at her toes. Her weak and uneasy voice sounded softer than a mosquito's buzz. Qian Jin was barely able to hear her name after listening super carefully. Grade 2. Gabriella. Qian Jin observed the mage apprentice in great detail. This girl looked like she was only 14 years old from both her appeal and figure. Was she actually 16? Qian Jin wasn't able to tell from just looking at her. Chapter 6. Brutal Strength. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Yudong Editor. Ice-T. Alright, I will remember. Qian Jin said as he picked up his wooden tub. At the other side, Gabriella bowed to him again. Qian Jin was concerned about the extra expense on the sheets as he carried the wooden tub and walked back to his residence quickly. The previously noisy room in the residence became even more noisy. Dozens of people sighed in unison. This is too unfortunate, some people shouted. Before I go and buy the sheets, I need to report to Instructor Rodriguez. These guys are too energetic and need extra training. Before Qian Jin could take out his frustration about his ripped sheets on these guys, he saw Roland rushing towards him as if he was being chased by a monster. Qian Jin was surprised by the speed that Roland ran. He never saw Roland run this fast, not even when Instructor Rodriguez trained Roland by chasing after him with a stick. It looks like I have to notify the instructor to train Roland harder by chasing after him with a spiked mace. There is more potential to be discovered, Qian Jin thought. Qian Jin, come. Roland reached out with his thick hands. He grabbed Qian Jin's arm and dragged him into the room. He was more passionate in dragging Qian Jin into the room compared to when he pursued his dream girl, Julius. Qian Jin was curious. Roland loved joining in on anything that was fun, but he wasn't sure what Roland was up to today. What's going on? Qian Jin asked casually as he followed Roland to the door. Nothing major. A dirty smile appeared on Roland's face. His face was a bit fat and had some acne. I just need a little help. Little help. Rudy from class 2 is arm wrestling with the guys from our class. All of them lost. Rudy. Qian Jin stopped walking. He pulled his arm from Roland's hands as he shook his head and asked, the tough bull Rudy from the warrior branch. In grade 1 and class 2. Roland nodded. Yeah, that big guy Rudy. Roland reached out for Qian Jin's arm again. Are you kidding? I'm not going. Qian Jin turned around and was about to leave. Did this guy get smacked on the head by Rudy? Did his IQ drop, he thought. Who was Rudy? In Oakland Academy, everyone had heard of Tough Bull Rudy's name. Among all grade 1 students in the warrior branch, he was one of the top 3 students who had the most physical strength. A lot of grade 2 seniors in the warrior branch couldn't compete with him in terms of pure physical strength. Although Qian Jin had never arm wrestled with Rudy, he knew he would be asking for trouble if he challenged Rudy, who was stronger than most adults, in an arm wrestle. The unfortunately, extremely ugly guy incident just occurred a few days ago. Qian Jin didn't want to fuel the fire by getting his ass kicked by the tough bull. Qian Jin. Roland chased after him and said, come on man, at least you're a student who was praised by Instructor Rodriguez. Are you scared of tough bull Rudy? Scared. Qian Jin stopped walking and looked at his friend. He tapped Roland's shoulder and said, to be honest, if you give me and tough bull Rudy each a stick and we could engage in a practice battle, I would beat his ass easily with a single hand. Also, if you give me a blade, even if 2 tough bull Rudys come, there would be only one ending, I will kill them both. But if we have to compete in this stupid arm wrestle, then you're right, I can't win against him. In the long corridor, Roland looked at Qian Jin helplessly. He knew that Qian Jin was right. However, most of the guys from grade 1, class 1 were defeated by tough bull Rudy. Qian Jin was the only guy who hadn't competed yet. At this point, a win or loss was no longer important to the guys from class 1. What was important was that they didn't want to lose the courage to compete, they didn't want to see anyone in the class lose that courage. Roland, you better find someone else. Call me when the tough bull wants to battle, and then I can promise you that I will beat him until he becomes the ugliest person at Oakland Academy. Qian Jin turned around and sighed after he said that. Arm wrestle. You energetic bastards should experience the poorness that I'm in right now. I'm worried about where to find the money to buy my sheets, and you guys are wasting energy on things like arm wrestling. Buy sheets. Roland, who was disappointed, thought of something after he heard that. He took a few big steps and caught up to Qian Jin. After tapping Qian Jin on the shoulder, he said, Qian Jin, you need money to buy a new sheet, right? Why not just go and try the arm wrestle? There is a bet going on with the arm wrestle. If you lose, I will pay for your bet. But if you win, you will get all the money. How about that? Bet. Win. Money. It seemed like someone casted a spell on Qian Jin. He stopped walking away and quickly thought, there's money if I win. If I lose, the worst that can happen is that I will get more shame. I'm ashamed enough by the extremely ugly guy incident, so more shame won't hurt. On top of that, maybe the tough bull is already tired after arm wrestling with all those people, I might get lucky. If I win, then I will have enough money to buy a new set of sheets. Remember what you said. If I win, all the money is mine. After Qian Jin said that, he walked into that room as fast as he could. It wasn't because he was impatient for money, but he just was afraid that after giving the tough bull too much rest, the tough bull might recover a large portion of his strength. By that time, his chance of winning would become slimmer. Yo, another one. It seems like this is the last person from class 1. Aren't you the extremely ugly-looking fool? What? Aren't you embarrassed enough? Would you be more satisfied if our Rudy kicks your ass? It was from a student from class 2 who was sitting on the bed close to the door. He was small and looked like a monkey. What he said was very mean. It made Qian Jin want to find a stick and beat him until he became the second ugliest student in the academy. A lot of people who were sitting on the bed laughed loudly. However, a few of Qian Jin's class 1 classmates looked at him in pity. As classmates, they knew about Qian Jin's abilities. He could be ranked as one of the top 10 students in terms of battle ability, but in terms of physical strength, he might not even be ranked into the top 50 among 150+ students in grade 1. Chapter 7. Damn, bro, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Yudong Editor. Ice-T Tough Bull Rudy was named the third strongest student in grade 1. He could beat a lot of grade 2 seniors in terms of pure physical strength. Qian Jin probably couldn't win against Rudy in arm wrestling even if a mage casted the magic spell, Strength of a Bull, on him. Although Rudy was from an ordinary family, he was born with this great strength. Some people even suspected that he might have the bloodline of northern barbarians and was from a barbarian descent. Brat, so you want to arm wrestle me? Rudy, who was sitting at the other side of the table, lifted his arm and smashed his elbow on the table. Boom! The arm that was almost as thick as Qian Jin's thigh made a really loud noise. After getting smashed by Rudy's arm, the firm wooden table shook a little. Let's go. Rudy slapped the table with his other hand and said, "Do you want me to go easy on you?" Qian Jin wanted to accept the offer, but after seeing the scornful look on the class 2 students' faces, he had to reject Rudy's tempting offer. You don't have to go easy. Qian Jin sat down confidently. He stared at Rudy's thick arm and thought, doesn't this guy get tired? From the looks of it, it seems like he isn't tired at all. At this point, no man would chicken out even if they knew that the chance of winning was very low. Qian Jin put his elbow on the table without any choice and gripped onto Rudy's big, rough hand. Qian Jin raised his head in surprise and saw Tough Bull Rudy looking at him in surprise as well. Their eyes met and exchanged their feelings of surprise. Does this Rudy really plan on going easy on me? Qian Jin thought. People who had arm wrestled before would know that as soon as their hands were gripped together, both people could roughly tell how strong their opponent was by the opponent's gripping force. From that, they were able to tell the likelihood of them winning. When their hands met, Qian Jin felt that Tough Bull Rudy didn't use his full strength. He found that strange. If they were going to arm wrestle like this, the chances of Tough Bull Rudy winning were less than 30%. The spectators on the beds and chairs yawned as they got bored. One by one, they reached into their pockets, grabbed some coins, threw them on the table and said, "I'm betting on Rudy." "I will bet on Rudy too." "Same here." After throwing their money onto the table, the students from class 2 stared at the students from class 1 and waited. This. The students from class 1 stared at each other in unison. They said quietly, "We will bet on Rudy as well." They were obviously embarrassed. What the F***? After hearing his own classmates betting on Rudy, Qian Jin felt the need to educate them with his fists. They were at least classmates for close to 1 year, so how could they do such a thing? They were hammering Qian Jin's morale. You guys are betting on Rudy as well. Then how would this bet work? Betting on Rudy. You guys aren't dumb after all. You know that Rudy is undefeatable. You guys are soft. He is your classmate after all. The students from class 2 chatted loudly and intentionally put down class 1. The students from class 1 blushed, but no one changed their bets to Qian Jin to show their support. As Roland walked up to the betting table, Qian Jin gave him a scary stare. Qian Jin knew his old friend too well. Roland wasn't someone who held on to moral codes. Betraying Qian Jin and betting on Tough Bull Rudy was something Roland could have done easily. The stare made Roland shiver a little uncontrollably and gave him goosebumps. He also knew his roommate and best friend quite well. Normally, Qian Jin was very cheerful and outgoing, and was kind and polite to others. However, once someone bothered him, then that person would be very unlucky. Qian Jin executed the principle, an eye for an eye, to the teeth. Roland couldn't forget about what happened 2 months ago. One day, Caesars, a warrior branch student in grade 1 class 3, pushed him into the washroom with 2 other guys and beat him ruthlessly. Caesars did that just to warn him not to get closer or pursue Julius anymore. On that night, after Qian Jin saw the purple and verdant swollen marks on his body and knew about what happened, Qian Jin just said, "How does threatening and beating a rival help with pursuing after a girl? This won't end here." At first, Roland thought Qian Jin just said that for the sake of venting his anger. However, 1 month after the incident, Qian Jin directly challenged Caesars to a duel in an intra-grade battle simulation class. After the duel began, Qian Jin threw Caesars, who was using a wooden stick as a weapon, onto the ground with his bare hands and gave Caesars a good beating and whooped his ass. The time that the battle took was very short. Qian Jin threw Caesars onto the ground in a blink of eye after the battle began. According to the rules of the battle, Caesars already lost at that moment. However, Qian Jin didn't give his opponent the chance to admit defeat. He landed his fist right away on Caesar's mouth, which pretty much shut Caesars up. Then, he delivered a spectacular ass-whooping performance that most of the instructors had never seen. When the instructors realized something was wrong and pulled them apart, Caesars, normally handsome, was no longer identifiable. Rumors said that when Caesars got home from the academy, it took his mom a good few minutes to realize that the person in front of her was her son, whom she had raised for dozens of years. Qian Jin was able to be that aggressive and relentless for his roommate, his friend. Roland suspected that if he betrayed the tight relationship that they had, he might be beaten to death by Qian Jin and buried in the jungle. Roland sighed continuously as he placed a few coins beside Qian Jin and said unwillingly and helplessly, "I will bet on Qian Jin." The students from class 1 looked at Roland as if he was stupid, and the students from class 2 gave him a thumbs up and said in unison, "Damn, bro." Of course, after knowing Tough Bull Rudy was far stronger than Qian Jin, the fact that Roland still bet on Qian Jin made people think that his brain was not working normally. Qian Jin gave Roland a look that conveyed the meaning, "You know what you are doing." He gripped Rudy's right hand a bit tighter as he prepared himself for the final time before the actual arm wrestle would take place. After feeling the increase in strength that he felt from Qian Jin's hand, Rudy's thick brown eyebrows jumped. He frowned as a surprised expression appeared on his face. Except for the 2 students who had a sixth of the barbarian's bloodline, Rudy never knew that there was someone who had such strength among grade 1 students. Chapter 8. Instant when you are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Yudong editor. Ice-T. Qian Jin was confused by Rudy. He thought to himself, does Rudy want to lose intentionally, or is he just playing with me? Is he trying to go into a disadvantageous position and pull a comeback to demonstrate his real strength? When both people were still confused, Roland grabbed onto their hands and pulled them to the fairest spot. He suddenly released both hands and yelled, "Go!" Boom! A loud deep noise sounded on the table. The strong impact force caused the table to jump up for a split of a second. Everyone in the room stared at this shocking scene quietly, and no one moved. The moment that Roland yelled, "Go!" Qian Jin smashed Tough Bull Rudy's hand onto the table with a sudden burst of power. Qian Jin won. Qian Jin didn't just win, he won so cleanly that Tough Bull Rudy didn't even have the time to react. He was finished by Qian Jin in less than a second. The process was so fast that it shocked everyone, and they couldn't accept the fact right in front of their eyes. Who was Rudy? He was the third strongest person among all grade 1 students at Oakland Academy. He was just behind the two warriors who had a sixth of the barbarian bloodline. He thrived on physical strength. Even a lot of the grade 2 seniors in the warrior branch were weaker than him in terms of physical strength. All the students from class 2 stared at Qian Jin. They were all wondering, how did a guy who was ranked around 50 in terms of physical strength beat Rudy in arm wrestling? Everything happened so fast that even Qian Jin himself was shocked and looked down at his right arm. He didn't know what had just happened. How did he defeat Tough Bull Rudy with a simple burst of strength that easily as if he was arm wrestling with Roland? Qian Jin even thought that he might be dreaming. It was unreal. The win came too fast. Tough Bull Rudy was instantly defeated by him. The room was so quiet that people could hear a pin drop. Roland looked at the situation on the table and was astonished. All he wanted to find was a person that could lose less terribly and put up a fight, and he didn't expect Qian Jin to win at all. Some people were so surprised that they even forgot to breathe. As everyone was shocked, Roland's chubby body shivered a little, then an excited expression appeared on Roland's face as he jumped onto the table like a pig jumping into a bush. He started seizing and grabbing the coins on the betting table and stuffed them into his pocket greedily. Qian Jin was slightly scared by Roland's sudden action. After seeing his friend trying his best to collect the coins, he was finally sure that he wasn't dreaming. Roland, who was from a merchant family, was especially greedy for money. There was a time that Qian Jin was shocked by Roland's greed. One time, they were going for a walk when Roland suddenly stopped walking and said that he smelled money. Someone must have dropped some money. After more than a few minutes of search, Roland finally found a coin under the grass. Ha ha ha, we won. We won. Roland fully utilized all of his 10 fat fingers to quickly collect the money. His shaky voice told the others that he was deeply surprised. Wow, we actually won. I never could have imagined. All the coins on the table went into Roland's money bag in a matter of seconds. Qian Jin gave him a glance and didn't ask him to hand over the money right away. Qian Jin had counted how many coins were on the table. If this fatty dared to go back on his words and keep all the money, then Qian Jin would caress him and teach him a lesson. I actually lost. How could this be? Tough Bull Rudy couldn't accept the result. He looked at Qian Jin and said in his deep voice, "This is impossible. I wasn't ready. We have to do it again." Qian Jin didn't pay attention to Rudy, he was carefully looking at his right arm that won him the arm wrestle. He opened his right hand wide and suddenly gripped his hand into a fist. 3 loud, crisp cracking sounds resonated in the room. He felt a real powerful strength in his arm as his sore muscles contracted. Power. Qian Jin slightly frowned. It was a warrior's fundamental ability to feel if his or her strength and power had increased. Because of the shame from the extremely ugly guy incident, Qian Jin paid less attention to himself. Even though he suspected that his strength had increased, he didn't really measure or test it. He only thought that it would be crazy if his dream was real. After winning against the third-ranked Tough Bull Rudy, Qian Jin had to seriously measure his strength. Although this simple test of gripping his hand caused a lot of muscle soreness, he could feel an enormous amount of strength and tell that he was much stronger than before. He opened his right hand again and thought to himself as he touched the tip of his nose, could it be that the virtual gaming space called Endless World is real? Could I really train in there and improve my strength? Qian Jin lightly shook his right wrist. The power was definitely real. Although some warrior students were unable to test themselves to see if their power had increased, as a member of the Qian family, he could test himself to see if his strength or warrior energy had increased, even if he was a member who had failed in the Bloodline Awakening ceremony. Hey! Tough Bull's wild voice interrupted Qian Jin's thoughts. Let's go again. I will win for sure this time. Again. After Qian Jin was sure that his strength had increased, he was relieved and less nervous. He looked around and asked, "Do you guys want to bet again?" The people in the room felt the urge to go and whoop Qian Jin's ass as he sounded very arrogant. Unfortunately, the academy prohibited fights in private. On top of that, none of the people in the room could beat him one-on-one. If they went together, Qian Jin would at least take a few people down before getting his ass whooped by the rest of the students. Qian Jin's fighting ability was ranked in the top 10 among all grade 1 students, and no one doubted that. Although he never fought like the other 9 students in the top 10 to figure out a proper order, everyone expected him to be on the top 10 list. No one knew exactly if he would be number 1 or number 10 on the rankings. The only way to figure it out was to actually fight against him. However, Qian Jin wasn't interested in fighting over a top spot on the ranking list when he came to Oakland Academy. Chapter 9. Do it twice if once is not enough. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Yudong Editor. Ice-T. On this topic, many people believe that although Qian Jin was a very talented warrior, he was afraid of losing. That was why he never participated in the grade ranking battles. However, Roland had a different feeling about his friend. He felt the reason why Qian Jin didn't participate in ranking battles wasn't because he was afraid of failure, but rather because he disdained these battles. To put it in other words, he didn't care about the rankings at all. This was his strange intuition. Roland couldn't figure out why he felt this way about his friend. He ultimately included this in his intuition of a merchant. No one in the room dared to battle Qian Jin. The only way for them to vent their anger was to bet and hope that tough bull Rudy wouldn't underperform and lose to Qian Jin again. As long as the tough bull won, they didn't have to beat Qian Jin themselves, and Qian Jin would lose face. I bet 5 coins on Rudy. I bet 7 coins. Qian Jin was thrilled as he heard numerous bets on Rudy. Although he wasn't sure what exactly the goddamn endless world was, blacksmithing did increase his strength by a lot, just large enough to surpass tough bull Rudy. Roland was joyful. He knew that Qian Jin wouldn't talk like this unless he was sure of the outcome. However, Roland was a bit confused at the same time. Qian Jin is a great fighter, but he shouldn't be stronger than Rudy. How did he win so easily? Did they collude and form some kind of scam? Qian Jin placed his elbow on the table again. Rudy looked at Qian Jin's average-sized hand. He forced himself to concentrate as he took a deep breath and smashed his elbow onto the desk. It made a loud noise. He opened up his hand and yelled, "Come on. I will win for sure this time." Everyone in the room tensed up and kept their breathing to a minimum as they saw Qian Jin's and Rudy's hands come together. They watched carefully as they wanted to see exactly how it would play out. Roland, who was acting as the judge, also felt the tension and took a deep breath as well. He raised his arm and suddenly dropped it down as he shouted, "Go." Roland's words were still resonating in the room. Tough Bull felt his arm pushed down by a strong force and pressed tightly against the table. He couldn't resist against it at all. Boom. It was the sound of a hard object hitting the wooden table. Rudy's forearm made intimate contact with the table again. That strong impulse shook the 4 legs on the table as well. This time, everyone except for Qian Jin and Roland had fallen into a state of shock again, as if they were all under a petrification spell. Not even one of them moved. Again. Qian Jin had won again. It was even cleaner this time. He won against Rudy instantly and easily with all eyes on him, with Rudy being 100% ready. The result was very surprising to a lot of people in the room that was a few hundred square feet. It was so quiet that even a pin dropping on the floor could be heard. It was quite different between competing in pure strength and competing in a fighting situation. There were times that underperforming or overperforming could occur in a fight depending on a lot of factors. It was hard to cheat or play smart in an arm wrestle. It was purely a battle of strength. Tough Bull Rudy was the most shocked by the outcome. His eyes were wide opened, they were comparable to a cow's eyes. He gave all he had in the last match by concentrating all his strength into his arm. If it was like before, Qian Jin might not have even been able to win this quickly against Rudy if he used both of his arms. Am I dreaming? Rudy quickly shook his head. He felt the pain in his forearm caused by Qian Jin's forceful smash. He wouldn't be able to feel pain in a dream. Rudy carefully observed Qian Jin. It would be normal if he lost to Qian Jin in a battle scenario. Losing to Qian Jin in an arm wrestle. Instructor Rodriguez would even freak out if he knew about this. We won. Qian Jin really won. A few warrior students from Class 1 who lost money in the bet jumped off of the bed as they raised their arms and cheered in excitement. At this point, they didn't even have time to think about their loss. Roland collected all the bets and put them in his pocket happily as he watched his classmates jumping and cheering. Winning the money was the second reason why he was happy. It was more exciting that Qian Jin could beat Rudy in an arm wrestle. Rudy was a long-time holder of the third seat in the strength ranking of the whole grade. He was someone who could compete with seniors in grade 2 and even grade 3 in terms of strength. How did I lose? Tough Bull smashed his elbow onto the table again. The table was the poor victim, it shook again and again. No. We must have a rematch. I still wasn't ready last time. Again. Qian Jin shook his head and looked at the stacked money bag on Roland's waist and the flat money bags on other people's waist. Never mind, none of us are from a rich family. Don't waste your parents' money. Let's do it again, this will be the last time. Tough Bull Rudy stared at Qian Jin. Qian Jin could tell from Rudy's expression that Rudy probably wouldn't let him go if he didn't accept it. Last time? Qian Jin asked. Last time, Rudy nodded. Okay. Last time it is. Qian Jin placed his elbow onto the table and asked, "Are you ready?" Ready. Set. Go. Boom. Rudy felt the burning painful sensation on his forearm again, as if someone smashed his arm onto a tree. The students in the room weren't surprised anymore. This was 3 instant wins now. The surprise had turned into numbness as the third time struck. Although most people in the room felt numb, Rudy didn't feel that way himself. His heart was breaking as he lost 3 times in a row. Other people might not know, but for the sake of winning, he even utilized the warrior energy that he had. All he wanted was to shame Qian Jin once. However, before he could completely unleash the warrior energy inside of him, he was beaten by Qian Jin by his brutal strength in an instant. Warrior energy could instantly improve one's strength and all other aspects of one's comprehensive fighting ability. It was the unique ability of a warrior. Rudy planned to beat Qian Jin once, even if he might be busted by other people for using it. However, he lost before he could fully utilize his warrior energy. Chapter 10. Do you guys want to become disabled? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Yudong Editor. Ice-T, how is this possible? The Tough Bull thought to himself in surprise. Did Qian Jin sneakily use his warrior energy in all 3 arm wrestles? Was his speed of unleashing and restraining his energy so fast that I couldn't even tell? The Tough Bull remembered Instructor Rodriguez saying that people who were skilled at using their warrior energy were able to unleash and restrain their energy in an instant and fool their opponents. But was Qian Jin very skillful at using his energy? It seemed impossible. Instructor Rodriguez had said that only people who had level 10 warrior energy were able to pull off something like that. Level 10 warrior. The Tough Bull shook his head. Instructor Rodriguez was only a level 5 warrior. Qian Jin had only been in the academy for less than a year, so he couldn't surpass the instructor even if he was super talented. We have to go again. I don't believe that you can win against me. The Tough Bull breathed heavily, and his eyes were turning red as the capillaries in his eyes filled with blood, becoming more and more visible. If he allowed Qian Jin to leave like this, then he would lose his title and rank as third place on the grade strength ranking. Again. Qian Jin shook his wrist and showed that he wasn't interested. This unexpected match had ended with a clear result. It would be better for him to go and buy sheets, return to his residence early, go to sleep with that mysterious mage hat on his face, and go through the trainings in that so-called virtual gaming space. No rematch. Tough Bull got up and blocked Qian Jin's path with his big body as he blocked the door. He said with a vicious expression on his face, "Don't even dream about leaving here until you accept the rematch." A few students from Class 2 jumped off of the bed and stood beside Rudy. Rudy had a strong strength as a warrior, and the students in Class 2 were proud of that. If they allowed Qian Jin to leave here with a winner's title, it would shame Class 2 as a whole. Qian Jin glanced through all the students that blocked that door, and his eyes ultimately locked onto Rudy as he sneered. He thought that this tough guy had a valiant personality, but who knew that he couldn't even handle failure? As a warrior, he should handle failure like a man. Admit to his loss and improve himself. Roland peeked at Qian Jin's face and quietly pulled a few of his classmates to his back. Qian Jin was the top 10 in the grade in terms of battling capabilities. Although he didn't challenge anyone to a duel to get a higher rank, no one believed that Qian Jin was only ranked 10th place. Compared to other people, Roland knew more about Qian Jin's true power level. Although Tough Bull Rudy looked tough and has help from his classmates, if Qian Jin got really pissed, all these people would keep him company in the hospital. Do you guys want to become disabled? Qian Jin's expression became gloomy. Did you all forget about Caesars? Caesars was a name like snow in a hot summer day. After the scene of Qian Jin beating Caesars flashed through the Tough Bulls and the others' heads, they shivered a little as they all felt a chill to their spines. Rudy and his classmates looked at each other and exchanged a troubled look. If they didn't block Qian Jin and let him leave, all they would lose was the title of third seat on the strength ranking. However, if they let Qian Jin leave now, it would mean that they were all scared of him. If word got around the academy, how could they keep their faces? I can't let him go easily. Rudy's eyes got sharper as he looked at the money bag on Roland's waist. There were a ton of coins in there, it would be intolerable to let him leave with it. It's fine if you don't want a rematch as long as you tell him to keep the money bag behind. Otherwise. Qian Jin's eyebrow rose as he pulled up his sleeves. With the strong arm of his, he smashed it on the table. Otherwise. Otherwise what? Do you want to rob me? Boom. Crack. The firm table that had a history took all of Qian Jin's smash. It shook a little and suddenly cracked into pieces of broken wood. The pieces fell to the ground and shook up a layer of dust. In the quiet room, a few pieces of wood were still rolling on the ground. Although the sounds they made were loud, it seemed to have a great effect on Rudy and his classmates. It sounded like war drums to them and surprised them deeply. Breaking the table with one smash. Although this table was quite old and would squeak every time someone touched it, it was still very hard for someone to break it. Rudy knew that he wasn't able to do that. If people had doubts about Qian Jin before, then Qian Jin's strength was no longer questionable. Qian Jin took a quick peek at the table beside his foot and thought, the training in that so-called endless world is too damn effective. Am I able to do this kind of stuff now? What? Qian Jin kicked the wooden piece beside him and glanced at the people who were in his way and said in a threatening tone, do you guys want to end up like this table? Rudy's classmates, who were standing beside him, instantly moved aside and cleared the sides of the entrance. They were so fast that they made Qian Jin question his attack speed. Can I even hit them if they move like this in a battle? After seeing his buddy's unified betrayal, Rudy, who was right in the middle of Qian Jin's path, gathered some courage and wanted to say something tough. But after seeing Qian Jin's sudden vicious stare, he quickly moved out of Qian Jin's way. Who was Qian Jin? Rudy didn't forget that Qian Jin was ranked top 10 on the list in terms of actual fighting ability. He had easily kicked Caesar's ass and sent him to the hospital. Rudy heard that Caesar's just got out of the hospital yesterday. Qian Jin shook his head as he saw Rudy chickening out. He thought Rudy was a brave warrior from the arm wrestling match. Now it seemed like he was wrong. He had wasted his time to give Rudy a chance to redeem himself. Roland safeguarded his money bag with his hands and was the first person who rushed out of that room. He turned around happily and watched Qian Jin walk out. Qian Jin was very suspicious. From Roland's greedy personality, he felt that his friend had come to the wrong academy. He should have gone to Oakland Business Academy instead of Oakland Mage and Warrior Novice Academy. Roland quickly walked up to Qian Jin, squeezed the fat on his face and smiled. Like I said, I would never misjudge someone. Qian Jin, you have low self-esteem. Even if you challenge Dirk, who is now ranked number 1 in the grade, you have a high chance of winning. Fight over a rank. Qian Jin sneered as he flicked Roland's forehead and said, can you be more immature? Just for a useless rank, I would have to be like a clown and let other people watch me fight.